Hey, how you doing? Matt from SuperCard, thanks for tuning in. Today what I'm going to be showing you is a small but important detail for the front of the Gallardo, and that's the two hinges that operate the front trunk lid. So yeah, these were quite complex little things to make, and I'll show you how I did it. Let's get into it. So here's a photo of a real Gallardo with its front trunk lid open. And I've highlighted the two hinges that I'm going to be recreating in this video. So each hinge consists of 3 small metal arms, and each arm has its own individual hinge pins. Here's one of the final hinges I've designed and made for my model. The hinges actually have a very specific motion. They start by lifting the trunk lid straight up, and then they continue in more of a pure rotational path, and then stop at a particular point when the front trunk lid is at a specific angle. To get the geometry and motion of the hinges perfect, I made this test jig, and I had to iterate the design of the hinge parts many times to get them functioning just right. As with all the parts I've designed for the Gallardo model, I documented every part in Adobe Illustrator. Here's a snapshot of my design file for the front trunk lid and the hinges. I'll start by tuning off a bunch of the layers, and we'll gradually be able to see the plans for just the hinge parts by themselves. So these are the parts I'll need for the hinges. Some of the parts I've drawn once, but I'll need to make 2 of them. What I'll do is I'll print the parts out on regular printer paper at full size, then I cut the parts out roughly and then glue them to the material that I want to make the part from. So now I have a template or a guide to accurately cut the parts out. In this case, I'm making the hinge arms from ice block sticks. I bought a pack of these wooden sticks from my local craft store. And first there are some holes to drill, and I'll use a small hand drill. Then I use a Stanley knife to carefully cut out all the parts. Next, I need to glue the hinge pins into the hinge arms, and I'll use toothpicks for the hinge pins. The tapered point fits snugly into the holes I drilled just a second ago, but I'll use a little PVA glue to make sure the hinge pins stay in place. There's a whole bunch of toothpick hinge pins to fit. The most important thing I'm trying to ensure when I glue the hinge pins in is that they are perpendicular or 90 degrees relative to the hinge arm as possible. If they aren't, the hinge pin won't open and close properly. My green cutting mat has a grid of white lines conveniently printed onto it, so I can check my hinge pins and arms are square against that. Now I need to cut most of my toothpick hinge pins down to length. I'll measure and mark where they need to be cut, and then I'll use my small side cutters to snip them off as cleanly as possible. An easy way to find the correct length of some of the hinge pins is to hold the hinge pin over the top of the part they will be pushed into. So this is what I end up with once all the hinge pins have been glued into place, and most are cut down to length. I've left a couple full length, and you'll see why shortly. I'm going to sand the little nubs or stumps that get left after I've used my side cutters so that the surface of the hinge arms is smooth. And the process takes quite a while because there's quite a few to do, but the end result makes it totally worth it. Next, what I'm going to do is smooth a bit of PVA glue over each hinge pin joint. What this will do is just make each joint a bit more smooth, so kind of acts a bit like filler, and also adds a bit of extra strength to the hinges. Cool, so now I can give the hinge arms some paint, because wooden hinges on a Gallardo would look a bit weird, right? I push them into an off-cut foam core board just to hold them in place while I paint them, and then I'll brush them with my Tamiya flat black paint. The top and bottom hinge plates need some assembly as well. So here what I'm doing is just like dressing or covering the exposed foam core edge, which you would otherwise see when the hinges are in the raised position. For the top hinge plates, I'll just glue a small piece of black paper over the edges like so. For the bottom hinge plates, I'll glue a couple of pieces of thick 1000 GSM poster board over the foam edge where the hinge pins will push into. This will add some strength, and the hinge pins will hold in place better. So now I can start final assembly of the hinges. The arms fit to the top hinge plates by pushing the hinge pins through like so. And you can see that leaving this hinge pin full length makes pushing it through the top plate and then fitting the other hinge arm over the top much easier. Once the second hinge arm is worked into place, I'll add a small amount of glue around the hinge pin and just work the arm into its final position. And then I'll repeat the exact same process for the other hinge. At this point I can cut the 2 hinge pins that I left full length down to size, again just using my side cutters. And sand the stubs so they're smooth. And I'll apply some glue for some strength and just to make that surface a bit smoother. And then I'll do a final touch up with matte black paint. The last arm can now be fitted into place, and the hinge pin pushes through the foam core top plate like so. Then I'll swing the shorter arm out of the way, and this time the arm will be held in place by pushing a small disc of 1000 GSM card over the end of the protruding hinge pin, a bit like a retaining nut. I'm checking that the arm swings freely and parallel to the foam core board top plate piece. Lastly, I add a touch of glue like so. Next I use a pin and a toothpick to kind of pre-drill the hinge pin holes for the bottom hinge plates. Now the bottom hinge pins should simply push into place like so. And again, I'll just check the hinges are operating properly as I go. I'll do some quick final touch-ups with matte black paint before fitting the hinges to the car, like this. So final fitment of the hinges to the car is pretty straightforward. They just need a small amount of glue on the bottom of the bottom hinge plates, like so, and then I press them into place. I know exactly where each hinge should be placed because I've designed a recess into the surface of the front frame, which kind of makes it fit like a jigsaw puzzle piece. Fitting the hinge to the other side follows the exact same process. And they're done. And the motion is smooth and they're strong enough too, which is pretty important. So yeah, there we go, another important detail done and finished on the front end of the Gallardo. I thought last week that we would be doing the front guards or the front fenders this week, but I realized that those hinges that we just did had to go on first. So yeah, check out next week's video. That'll be about the front fenders or the front guards. And then after that, we've got things like the headlights and the front trunk lid, and that will completely finish up the front end of the Gallardo. So it's really coming together well. If you've got photos that you want to share of a project that you're working on, just email me at matt@supercardmodels.com, or you can DM me on Instagram, or just drop a comment below. That'd be awesome. So thanks for checking out the video, and I'll see you next week. Bye.